So NLP started with John Grinder. You read or maybe listened to some of the videos, but if not, this is a sort of potted history. It started with John Grinder and Richard Bandler. Richard Bandler was a sort of math student who had learnt therapy because he had transcribed therapy sessions. Right? So basically, he heard this famous therapist, Fritz Perls. He transcribed the sessions. Client said this, Fritz Perls said something else. And by listening to just, reading that and listening to it, he thought, I could do this. And supposedly had reasonably good results. Obviously, not brilliant, but not bad. So John Grinder was interested and wanted to use his knowledge in linguistics. He'd studied with a chap called Noam Chomsky. And if you want a little joke there, you can, if you go online, buy little gnomes of Noam Chomsky. So there's actually Noam Chomsky. Check it out. It's a little bit of a joke there, but it's also true. The little thing you put the garden ornament, the little hat. It's gone off on one slightly. Back to Noam Chomsky. So Noam Chomsky is a very famous linguist. He's also quite famous politically, but his great fame is really that he discovered something called transformational grammar, that the idea that universally all languages have a grammatical root. So he worked this out in his 1950s PhD thesis, and he went on to teach linguistics in the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT. I think he's still there today. He's about 94 or something. Anyway, the idea is deep structure, surface structure, this is from Noam Chomsky, is we are supposedly, as human beings, meaning-making machines. So, as a little boy or little girl, I am told surface structure, that means words and symbols come at me, and my mum or something says to me, be a good boy and do your homework. Now, those words quite innocently come towards me, and I hear them, be a good boy and do your homework. Now, I want to make meaning of that. Now, what does that mean? And at that moment, that goes into deep structure, my ideas, my identity, emotions, thoughts, feelings, whatever. And I say what it means could be misinterpreted. I might say, so my mum is really saying that unless I work all the time, I'm a bad person. So that now becomes a belief. And a belief is something which is operating at a deep structure, so I feel it. So after that experience, my mum quite innocently encouraging me to do my homework, I may now kinesthetically feel anxious if I'm not working. I am no longer saying the belief. I'm not sitting around, wandering around saying, be a good boy and do your homework, because that's not how beliefs operate. They start linguistically, but they then neurologically descend into your system, so you feel it. In other words, feel good, feel bad. So I'm feeling bad all the time, and I'm working like a dog. Now, I did do pretty good at my homework. I did get all my exams. But as I get older, the strain of the work is beginning to pay off badly. So I go and see a coach. And I say to them quite innocently, well, everyone knows unless you work all the time, you're a bad person. So the coach, I'm on the other chair now, says, ha-ha, you just said something. Everybody knows that unless you work all the time, you're a bad person. Can I repeat that back to you? So I repeat it back to the person. And then I add in the words, do you believe that to be true? And then me, who has seen this coach, is thinking, unless you work all the time, you are a bad person. So now what's happened is the coach has not done anything other than repeat my words and ask me to challenge the belief. Do I believe that to be true? Now, the words, fortunately, as I blurted them out spontaneously, are now a surface structure. And I can think about it and think, well, no, I think it's not true. And now the coach is, really on to something. And he says, do you know anyone who doesn't work all the time who's terribly effective? And I go, oh, yes, in fact, I do. I know someone who works quite a bit, but also rests really well, and they're even more effective than me. I need a new belief. So now, with this new belief, hopefully goes into deep structure, I reprogram myself, and now I can chill out and do fuck all, and I'm happy. Thank God. All right, so that's the idea. Do you get the idea? And surface structure, deep structure. So it's this transformation of making meaning, and then once the meaning is made, you're sort of stuck in it because it just feels bad and you don't know why. And that's kind of therapy in a nutshell. Yes? Okay, good. So, this is what you're trying to do then. So this is the idea, this diagram, which is, I think, in How to Coach with NLP, is that you receive input from the outside world, and it goes through your five senses into your inner world, where it's filtered through these ideas. Now, we've written here deletion, distortion, and generalization. I'm not sure who the we is. You can challenge that later. In fact, no, I'll come to it later. Deletion, distortion, and generalization, I build up an internal map, and that puts me in a specific state, and then I behave in a certain way. So the meta model is saying, you get this input, surface structure, and it kind of goes into deep structure. Let's examine how this information or input is deleted, distorted, and generalized, and see if we can make things a little more comfortable for you. So let's now take a look at this phrase. Let's say I'm saying this to myself. Because, if you want to start with the meta model, you begin to notice your own inner words that pop up quite spontaneously. What do you say to yourself that keeps you stuck? So let's have some examples. Anyone say repeatedly, I'm not good enough, or how will I even start? Great.
There are a lot of time.
Sorry?
There are a lot of time still.
There's a lot of time. Is that positive? No, because it's like a procrastination.
I shouldn't do anything.
There's still lots of time. Yes. Okay. Great. Yeah. I haven't got enough time. Anything with don't, must, or should in it? Well, should or can't, or I don't deserve it. I'm too old. Well, we got someone online? Yes, Emma? I can't do that. And that's great because the that isn't even clear, and that's called a deletion, which we'll come to in a moment. And the can't is a generalization. But I can't do that. These are just like words that float around in your head, and you feel bad, and you say, I can't do that, and then you just continue to feel bad. Is that fair? Anyone else in the room?
Scared.
You were both scared.
No, I'm
Does you feel scared, but are there any words that go with that?
This is for others, not for me.
This other people can do it, but I can't. Yeah. Well, this is for others or not for me, as you said. So this is familiar territory. Welcome to humanity. I've got one. If you trust people, they will always let you down. Now, I'm not saying I believe that. I just sort of thought, I like the sentence because it's got a lot of naughty things in it, according to the meta model. So what's wrong with that sentence? Always. So you've picked on the word always, and always is a generalization. So remember the word generalization, deletion, distortion, that's what we're heading towards. So certainly the word always fits into the generalized category. Perfect. Anyone else? What else could go wrong? The link. Yeah, great, the link. So if you trust people, then. So there's a kind of question mark over the link. If you trust people, then they will always let you down. Or you could also say, if you trust people, they will never let you down. Or if you don't trust people, the link is questionable. Perfect. Anything else? Sorry? You're setting up for failure. At the same time, is there a specific word in that sentence? So we've got the link, we've got the word always. Anything else? People, yeah. So who specifically are they talking about? What, all people on the planet? So again, people is what's called an unspecified referential index, which means that it's vague. And I'm going to start using these fancy terms in a moment, but don't worry, it's the principle. So people is vague. So the point is that you could challenge, if your client sits down and say, if you trust people, they always let you down, you could have three choices. One is the link, which is a distortion, saying, so how is it that if you trust people, how do you then make the link that they'll let you down? It's a reasonable challenge. And then if somebody says always, you could say, what, there's never a situation ever once? If somebody says to you, I'll get you that burger, ma'am, that they'll never show up again. the McDonald's or something? No. I mean, is this universally true? No. So once you break the rule, then it can't be always. And then lastly, people. Which people specifically? Who? What, everyone on earth? All right, And then somebody might then say something like women. Say, all women? Okay, my mum. Okay, so now we're getting somewhere. Because again, these things become kind of foggy and mucky and stuff. Yeah. So does this make sense where we're headed? We want to be able to become experts. This is what therapists and coaches do, to be able to notice all these, I quite like calling them naughty words. It's sort of very British, isn't it? They're not really naughty, but, I'm going to call them the naughty words. Do you like that? It's sort of like they should go to the naughty room. So deletion is people, because we don't know which people they're speaking about. So the actual content itself is somehow deleted. Yeah? If I'm thinking about my mum and I say people always let you down, then, and I don't know that, I may not even know I'm thinking about my mum, then just turning my mum into all people on the planet isn't helping me, is it? It's making it vague. And the really interesting thing about deletion is that it's where we start. It's not fair. People aren't kind. They won't let me. We start in deletion. It's a blur. That you're in a complete dark space with that, right? And then you go into more rule-based. It'll never work. I can't do it. You begin to say you're creating rules, and these rules are very negative. And then the kind of, if you like, the rules then become more specific with these kind of links. Generalization always, cause-effect is the link. If you trust people, then there's a cause-effect that they will then let you down. So how would you challenge it? We call these interventions, all with a question. Which people or person specifically? Agree? That would be a way of challenging it. Now, when we say challenging it, if a client says to me, people, if you trust people, they always let you down, and I say, which people or person specifically, I'm not challenging it, I'm encouraging them to challenge themselves. This is key. So the question is not challenging the belief, the question is encouraging them to challenge the belief. Yes? Okay. Always, has there ever once been a situation where someone has not let you down? Again, counterexample breaks the pattern as always, because if something isn't always true, there can't be an exception. And if there is an exception, the rule is broken. And again, there's a chance to shift from surface structure to deep structure, like maybe that's not a rule, maybe I can shift that belief. And then the link, how does trusting people mean they will always let you down? So there is a sort of like big picture of where we're headed. Can we now chunk it down into little things, and we'll start with deletion. Generalization. So there's 3 generalizations. One is universal, never, always, that kind of thing. I never get to do the things I want. I always, will never happen to me. There's a modal operator of necessity, which is the kind of moral imperative, I should, I must, this sort of thing. And then there's a modal operator of possibility, I can't say no. Now, the difference between, for me, the way I remember it, is thinking of the words necessary and possible. Should implies it's a necessary, like it's some kind of moral mandate for me to do it. It doesn't mean I have to do it, but it's sort of, there's a sense of some pressure to do it. So necessary is kind of milder. Impossible, though, isn't. If you can't do something, it's literally impossible. Does that make sense between necessity and possibility? So I should do it is sort of like, well, but, yeah, you should, but... An obligation, yes. So it just is a modal operator of necessity is, I say the way I remember that is it's necessary. It's something which is in some senses possibly a rule. So if your parent says to you something like, people like us should always wear a tie. Now, obviously that is a kind of you're not going to die if you didn't wear a tie, but it's a sense of a rule, and in some sense it's quite insidious, because you kind of believe for you to be the sort of person, whatever, it's necessary, while possibility is much stronger, like it is literally impossible. So I can't do this. Can't, linguistically, means it's literally impossible. Now, I don't mean this is true, it's just what the language means, okay?